Welcome everybody to this regularly scheduled board meeting of the South Tahoe PUD. Would you all please stand and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for coming. At this time, do we have any comments from the audience on items that are not on the agenda? I don't see a man rush to the podium. So let's move on to, are there any corrections to the agenda or consent calendar?
Just a question on the consent calendar. I was just curious, what kind of percent are we getting from the state fund? Just out of curiosity, like
This is on item
say,
A.
yeah.
I don't know, is Lynn around? Lynn, you can answer this. Paul, do you know?
It's not that big a deal, just kind of with making markets how they were. I was just curious. Interest rate?
Probably negative interest rates.
At this point, right?
Oh, this is for the SRF loan. They go up and down a little bit because the interest rate is based on the state's bond rate when they issue bonds, and it's whatever we get at that time is 50% of that rate.
Okay.
They have been low lately, and I believe the last I heard was down to as low as like 1.3. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I was just reading and I was curious just kind of how everything in the globe is impacting those rates as well.
Yeah.
Very interesting. You're never going to get money that cheap.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. We just had the discussion, so we didn't have to bring it forward, so that's cool. I think we're going to get a motion on this.
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
Okay, here it is, Melanie.
We're going to give this a try. So I'm going to send this to you, and we're going to see if it shows up, and we can vote in person this time on your screen.
It's been so long since we did that.
I know.
I almost forgot what steps.
I forgot what it looked like.
I'm sorry, Dwayne, I don't look any better, man. I apologize.
All right, that passes 5-0, and Brian, you did an excellent job. Okay, the very first item is 6A here. That's the Solar Energy and Economic Development Fund.
Good afternoon. So I'm here to ask today for the board support to authorize staff to enter negotiations with the shortlisted vendor for solar projects at the wastewater treatment plant. To go back in time a little bit, it was a little over a year ago, July 2019, that the board authorized a memorandum of understanding with the SEED Fund, Solar Energy and Economic Development Fund, for the Sierra region, for us to participate in the preparation of a request for proposal to go out to solar vendors as a bundle with other agencies in the region. Our partners in this RFP were the cities out at Tahoe, Alpine County, the Truckee Airport, City of Nevada City, and the Nevada City Schools.
Truckee donor.
Awesome. They were not actually part of the proposal that went out, or the RFP that went out. So, but one of the customers, the Truckee Airport, was on that list. So, in any case, the RFP hit the streets in May. We received 6 proposals from 6 firms. We shortlisted 4 and interviewed those. And after the interview process, a little bit of follow-up, some requests for revised pricing. We finalized our scores of the 4 proposals and selected a preferred vendor. There are some representatives from the top of the list here today. And so then the next steps would be to refine the project description, work with the preferred vendor to finalize the pricing, talking about implementation schedule, getting into some of the details, how the system connects up to the plant and so on. In any case, before we move forward with that, we wanted to come to you all today to get some feedback about where we are at and confirm with you all that it's something you want to pursue. A little bit about the proposals that we received in the projects that were in consideration. They focus primarily on the wastewater treatment plant. We asked that the vendors propose on a smaller system here at the wastewater treatment plant as part of their main proposal, one that falls within that 1 megawatt cap that Liberty currently has for behind-the-meter systems. And then also to propose as an option a larger facility that could cover our entire consumption for the plant. That smaller 1 megawatt facility, somewhere in the 25 to 30% of our consumption would be offset by a solar array of that size. We would be in something like 4.5, 5 megawatt range if we wanted to offset 100% of our consumption. So those were two things that we looked at as part of the proposal. The other two that we looked at were actually recommending that we set those aside. One is for a quite small facility out at Luther Pass Pump Station. It would have the capacity to offset only 1% of our consumption at that site, just based on the size of the parcel available for installing facilities at that location. So that doesn't seem like a huge benefit to the district to have a facility of that size there. The other one that was also an optional facility for the proposers to look at was a large array out in Diamond Valley Ranch, a utility scale array. And just interesting to note that of the 6 proposers, no one proposed to move forward a project like that. So anyway, we tend to agree that it's interested in building it, then there's no reason to keep it on the table. So the proposals that came in, we received prices both for a direct cost, so basically if we were to purchase the system and run it ourselves, versus a PPA, a power purchase agreement, where they would permit, design, build, construct, and own the array, and then we would purchase the power from them for the length of the contract. The proposal set that term at 20 years. I think there's some room for discussion there if we wanted to talk to them about something a little bit longer, 25 years. That would be an option as well. And so the proposal we received for the 1 megawatt facility out here, so that 25 to 30% consumption offset, was 9.8 cents per kilowatt hour. For comparison's sake, we currently pay on average to Liberty 8.5 cents per kilowatt hour. But the difference here is that 9.8%, there's no escalator over the term of the contract. So it would be 9.8 cents every year for 20 years based on their proposal. We've been seeing 2 to 3% rate increases from Liberty over the last couple of years. So it only takes 7 to 9 years for us to break even with the solar and start saving money by having that solar array available to us. So this is kind of some of the main highlights. Do you have questions?
If you don't mind, indulge me, because you guys did this when I was not here about a year ago, so I did catch up this week on the operations committee, and Nick has been very involved in it and probably has more of the answers. So I met with our proposers today, and went through some questions. One of the questions I asked was, are there mutual indemnity agreements? I'm sure Gary would make sure would happen. The other is, would there be an option for us to, let's say 10 years out, say we want to exercise an option and keep this. Would there be upgrades? Could they upgrade the system because technologies improve? And then one of the questions I wanted to ask was the 4.5 megawatts. Does that include, that doesn't include what the power that we use on Luther Pass, does it?
No,
I didn't think so. It's just the plant.
just,
And it wouldn't actually power our facility, which I thought it would if we had that much electricity. It's a credit offset purchase. But the one interesting part is if indeed there is no risk to the district, and our attorneys and people think there isn't, if we go larger, then we can immediately see benefits. They didn't have an exact number for me, but that would have to be determined. But am I correct? It's Seth, right? Oh, Devin, okay. I get you guys.
That's all.
So we might want to have him talk a little bit about it, because I wanted to make sure, and I thought we should offer something to the college since they're right here, and they might want to see.
Julie Rose, you said there was a cap of 1 megawatt?
so, yeah, my understanding is that Liberty has a cap of 1 megawatt for a behind-the-meter system, right? So,
Which is essentially.
so that would be feeding us directly, correct? That 1 megawatt system. If you had a larger system, that would be in front of the meter, right?
So we actually have the ability, because since we would be behind the load, and the load is so large there, a little bit over almost 7.9 million kWh annually, we do have the ability to basically appeal to Liberty Utilities for a larger system under the same type of constraints, which would be that net metering behind, which would basically be our goal with the 4.6 megawatt that we looked at as kind of an alternative option to the original 1 megawatt.
And Shannon, when you were negotiating Alpine County for our generation there, Liberty wasn't that interested in buying it, were they?
That's correct. And Liberty also didn't have staff, and that was essentially the first PPA, is what they indicated to us, of anybody really selling them power in the community that wasn't a residential solar type setting. And so they had they didn't have anybody on staff. They'd never done it before. And so we actually hired consultants as a district that really helped us walk us through that process with Liberty and really helped them. They ended up bringing somebody on board who I think has since left Liberty. And so they really didn't have an interest in doing it. They weren't investing in it. They didn't have staff who would work on PPAs with us. And so it's not something that they were really interested in. They felt they were doing us a favor by accepting our energy from that facility and purchasing it from us. We ultimately, that facility, under, as I understand it in California, there is a requirement from the PUC that power companies purchase power from utilities, water and sewer utilities, at a higher tariff and a higher rate than they would normally do so. But that is broken down across the state based on the amount of the size of the utility, the electrical utility. We've consumed all of that tariff, all of that amount, really with Luther Pass or with the C Hydro unit. And so that tariff that we've already established and negotiated with them isn't really applicable to any of the other efforts that we do. So that agreement and that tariff that we established isn't going to apply to whatever we do in this instance.
So by suggesting that we go larger, and I'm just throwing the idea out, I'm not sure, would we be in risky territory of messing up the whole deal because we couldn't get them to buy it?
And can I follow up on that question
Certainly,
a little bit more specific? My understanding is that 1 megawatt cap is a PUC issue. It's not so much a Liberty issue. Is that correct in your understanding?
So it's more of the net metering approach.
Okay.
As far as sizing. Now, the one major difference of these components that we see on our side, and might be different than the situation that you just spoke to prior, is that with the size of the load and the size of the service and the proximity
Yeah.
of the generation facility being right there at the service,
Yeah.
it can actually be interconnected as a behind-the-meter type of system.
Okay.
So it wouldn't necessarily be us, Liberty Utilities would not be the off-taker. The wastewater treatment facility would be the off-taker,
Sure.
and that's the difference in this transaction, that we're bringing, lack of a better term, the cake fully fed. It's
Yeah.
one of those things where, yes, Liberty Utilities is going to sleeve that transaction or sleeve those data and those watts of energy, but they're directly going to go to offset the wastewater treatments.
Okay. Yeah, and I think, I mean, in our conversations with among staff, we would certainly, we don't want to be the limiter in the size of that facility out there. We'd love this thing to be as big as we could make it. It doesn't, and so if there is a mechanism and an approach that we can work with the provider to develop a much larger solar facility out there, I think as staff, at least in-house, our conversations have been, let's do that. We're not limiting the size here. It's what can get done, what can get permitted, and what can get built with these limitations from Liberty, the PUC, and TRP and others that we think are the limiters. We don't want to be standing in the way. We'd love as big a facility as we can get out there.
So our contribution to the whole deal is we have the land that and the space.
And we also have the customer. We're also the customer.
And we're the customer. So my questions were on the smaller project, and there's no guarantee whether it's 6 years or 9 years, go with the smaller. There's pretty much of a guarantee, and we'd have to see the numbers before I jump completely on board. But if we made a bigger project, we could immediately make profit on the deal.
Well, that's kind of a question I had. This is more simple, more big picture. We've looked at these behind-the-meter projects before a lot. Most recently, within the last 2 years. And nobody until now has been able to pencil these out. They were all money losers. Besides economy of scale, how is this working now? I haven't read about any technological jumps in these products. So if you guys can fill me in, that'd be great.
Yeah, I can definitely take on. I think that.
Yeah, if you want to come talk on the microphone.
If you don't mind stating your name, that would be great.
Denver Williams. And yes, so it's actually two components. So the first component is going to be that economies of scale. Obviously, as we discussed prior, there are multiple entities in this. So actually, this system size is just one system as a part of many more that we're looking at as a part of this. So that goes into it. Additionally, our investment partners that we're bringing to the table from our side have a lower rate of return. The reason being is we have something called the investment tax credit, which is the ITC, which is due to sunset. So this year it's at 26%, next year it's moving to 22%. So what we've seen from a private equity, from a tax equity standpoint, is a big push to take a lower rate of return on these projects to satisfy tax equity.
I understand you could buy a lot of the components before the end of this year, dedicated to this project, take advantage of that.
Yes, sir, exactly. And our firm's prepared to do that.
So I went in skeptical of the small one and came out thinking we might want to do the big one.
Well, the other thing I find interesting is I fully expect that these numbers are right about Liberty's rates over a 20-year period. They're most likely will double. Why are you guys not having an escalator on there?
Because once the system is built, all of the operations and maintenance is actually built into the turnkey cost. So in a sense, everything is fully baked from the beginning.
So they get their rate.
I mean, that's really what it does.
Yes, sir.
Is that fixed rate.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And on the smaller project, it's a little higher than what we're paying now, so it'll take a while to catch up. On the larger one, and I still don't know the number, so I'm still a little skeptical. But I think that might be a smart way to go if it doesn't mess up TRPA. You know, you're talking about covering some bare ground, removing trees.
You definitely know.
You know anything about it on that, Nick?
Yeah, so what happened was I met with Joanne Marquetta and John Hester and some other folks there about a year ago. It's give or take now that I've kind of lost all sense of time. But anyway, we kind of just by chance actually, we looked at a solar project and I took them through the permitting process as I saw it to ensure that we had kind of everything we need to consider. And I actually use this as the example. So I walked Joanne Marquetta and John Hester through this project from everything you could imagine, from scenic to coverage to environmental to water, to everything you could possibly imagine. And I do that a lot with different projects, and with the exception of this one, they've never offered to write me a letter saying, before you submit anything, we'll guarantee we're not going to get in your way. This was the only time.
So in other words, there are no coverage issues with ground-mounted panels?
No, and I mean, any minimal coverage they try to assign to us, I would say I think you can get rid of any of it, but because these are undeveloped parcels, and most, like there's a huge, I think it's capability 7 if I remember correctly, and some 1B, but we're going to have a mountain of allowable coverage out there right now that we're not using anyway. And so it's going to be a minimal amount. You're talking maybe, I don't think anybody, if we got
I thought at one time we were out of coverage.
Only on the treatment plant.
Only on the plant site itself, okay?
Yeah, and when we permit future projects, we do look at the 6 parcel area as a whole, and like, basically look at all the, the 7, the 4, the, all as a big lump across the whole parcel area. So any coverage they would assign to that system, would come out of that pool of coverage, but it hasn't been an issue in the past. I mean, there's a lot, even in the areas that are area 4 out there, we have a lot of coverage available to us.
And I've been thinking that there's some properties that we have that the city owns next to our, for instance, in back in Meeks, there's a couple of lots, and we have vandalism, and there's itinerants there where we might trade, where we would accept that property, and the city could be given some property, as a trade, and could build affordable housing on it, and somewhere down the road. So, when it comes to coverage, I would hope that we wouldn't use up all that coverage, because I think that'd be a great trade to make, or make it a police and fire station with an academy for the college, something like that. So,
I would say I was able to work through, sorry, Dwayne, but I was able to work through a solar project similar to this, and we got it down to 0 coverage. It wasn't to this size, just completely full disclosure, but just the way we installed it meets the lift off the ground.
Yeah, I was going to say, how high are these going to be monitored, or is that?
So they can be customized to standard. So and that's
Yeah,
part of our
because
engineering.
a little side thing, you want them high enough off so they can continue to shed snow. Because if it's too low on the ground, it piles up and then it won't shed, and then it has to melt off. It'll really reduce shed efficiency.
Yes, sir.
And then there's the coverage issue, right? I mean,
So higher off the ground, the 3 to 1 and all that stuff, right? Yeah.
Paul, do you have anything to say about it? Do the numbers look?
No, we talked about it quite a bit in the
Paul's a skeptic like I am. So.
Well, we talked about it quite a bit in agenda review, and one of the main questions was, were we certain that the 9.8 was fixed? And then, we talked with, obviously, any savings is speculation at this point, because we don't know what the delivery rates are going to be. We assume they're going to increase over time because they have. But yeah, so obviously we can't say anything for certain.
I could also make the assumption, and I would say the correct assumption, that delivery rates are going to escalate and increase. And I'll tell you why. So fundamentally, people talk about the energy system in California. It's really a microcosm of what we see in the district. It's deferred maintenance meets exponential increase in cost. And so I tend to think, just like we've had in our 218, kind of those discussions, you're going to see that the CPUC and up and down the board. So I think not only are rates going to go up, I'd put money on it right now if anyone wants to take it, the rates are going to go up significantly higher than they are now.
And I want, just to be clear, with the discussions that we as staff have had, is we are, no offense, very skeptical as well, right? We're looking at this going, man, something feels a little too good to be true on this deal.
That was my first read.
And we're not sure of that. And so, we have approached, we had brought Gary in from a legal perspective to give us some advice. And I don't want to steal his thunder. He's made some great points on this issue. But he's also recommended that we bring in a third party who is an expert in dealing with these issues. We certainly have Optimi, and the folks with Seed that are working on the project. But honestly, no offense to them, but they get paid if the project goes through. So we want to bring in a third party to help us be expert in dealing with this because this is out of our wheelhouse. And I think Gary has brought to the table an outside party through HDR that may be able to help us with that. And to me, that gives me a much better level of comfort because somebody who's in this industry and really knows what the heck they're talking about would be great to have that person looking over our shoulder through this process. Because we don't want to make this mistake. We don't want to be tied into a boondoggle for 20 years plus and making a huge fault here. We want this to be right, and we want all the I's to be dotted, T's to be crossed. We want to do our due diligence because we're not comfortable with this either.
Usually when we rushed in the past, and I can think of times, I can remember the consultants, so we kind of go around. We made mistakes.
Yeah.
My concern was, is this company going to be the company we're with long term? Because you can sell assets, you can sell, they've got a stream of income, they can sell it. So you're the guy now, we like you, who's next? And the other was trying to remember exactly.
If I could speak to that issue, while you're thinking of the next issue, is one of the things, as I understand the way this is set up, is if for some reason, for example, if they don't maintain the system and they don't operate it correctly, then their production of energy falls off. That doesn't affect our ability to purchase energy from Liberty. It may affect our cost because we're maybe paying more for Liberty. But this unit, it's in their best interest to maintain and operate this system to its optimal capabilities because that's more power than that they get to sell to us and the more revenue that they generate. It's not in their best interest to have this system not working well.
So there's an inherent free market incentive.
Exactly.
And could you speak to just kind of the limited amount of maintenance that's required on a system like this?
So really, all we're looking at now is just a simple cleaning of the system by hand. Everything that we have will be fully monitored and fully reported with investment grade meters. So that way we'll actually have live broadcasts. So if there is anything that goes on with the system, just like you said, it is in our best interest to make sure that it's fully operational at all times. Additionally, as a backstop for the investment side, we have a production guarantee that goes with the system that would be outlined once engineering is complete. So where if for some reason, let's say that it's not a system function problem, it's not an installer problem, but for some reason the system does not produce within a 10% variance of that total production, the manufacturer will actually true that up on an annual basis. So you don't even have to worry about the investor being made whole with that.
Let me put you on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't hold you to the number, but in order for me to second a motion or make a motion, I'd like to hear what your best guess if we went a large facility.
Yes, sir. So one of my questions.
Let's see, the 4.5 megawatt. What do you think the numbers would look like?
Correct. So
in a ballpark.
Right. No. 100%.
And they submitted on that actually.
Yeah.
Right? We got revised.
I didn't read that part.
I know I didn't get.
So in one of my questions was that in the release for the meeting, it actually states a 14.6 megawatt system that would be producing 21 million watts of energy annually. So I didn't know if that was a typo or if we were just reverting back to the original 4.6, which would offset 100% of the wastewater treatment facility. We feel very confident that if we're able to do the 4.6 megawatt system, that we can get to grid parity, which means that we can match the average rate that Liberty Utilities is currently supplying. If we had a pathway to utilize the larger system to go to the 14.6 megawatts, then we feel very confident that we could beat their rate, which would show cash flow positive day one from the system. Again, same type of components. Economies of scale, more than one project kind of in this series that we would be performing, and then also lower hurdle rate of return for the investors because of the push for the 26% ITC to mitigate tax liability.
Okay, very interesting. And at this point, we actually aren't committing money yet, so.
Just the contract, right?
I was about to say there's zero out of pocket. You would pay once the system is power flow, do your contract by what power is supplied from the solar array. There's no out-of-pocket expense through the development, construction, commissioning of the system.
The only expenses we would incur if we move forward is staff time, Gary's time, and then this third-party technical consultant that we've already
There's
identified.
liability from whoever they had operating the system on our property. We've already had a contractor that somebody fell and got hurt earlier. So we want that kind of thing in there.
Yeah, and what I think today's, if I understand this correctly, Julie, what we're doing today is really briefing you and seeking feedback. We're really moving into the next phase of contract negotiations. You've essentially already authorized us in the past to do this when you've authorized this project to move forward previously. And we just want to make sure that we are on the right path with you, that we're heading in the right direction and we're negotiating in good faith so that everything is going in the right direction. I totally hear the concerns that you have, particularly with what happened at the cell tower site. We want to be well protected, and I'm happy to say that Gary does a fantastic job of reviewing our contracts to absolutely make sure, if nothing else, that stuff is in there. Even though we may disagree sometimes on other issues on our contracts, he does a fantastic job of making sure that liability is covered. And so, again, what we're doing today is briefing you, making sure that we're understanding that we are heading in the direction you want us to head.
So let me give you a little highlight of where we would be going from here. So we've got this looming deadline at the end of the year so that they can secure the safe harbor for the components and get that pricing. And so by the end of December, we would want to be far enough along in the contractual negotiations that they feel comfortable doing that. And so our intention was to bring back a contract to you in December. But before then, there's other things that we need to talk about. We need, we've had some discussions about like the siting of an array. We've got this discussion of 1 versus 5 or 15. We've got discussions about how it would tie in and where exactly the array would
Access for others, okay.
Exactly. And so, I appreciate you were nodding your head when, you were saying the 9.8 was fixed, but, I think there are conversations that we need to have in short order over the course of the next month to make sure that we are, we have the right system going into that contract. And so we would expect to come back to the board in, say, a month's time to give a more detailed presentation on what the system would look like. We'd like to see, you guys have all those analyses that were in the proposal that was for something different than the revised pricing. Right. And so, we would want to update those for wherever we land with the system configuration. And then, then we would come back in about a month and show you what that is. And if it's still looking good, then we would finish the work on the contract. And I think Optimi had highlighted like basically 3 parallel tracks that will now start moving forward at the same time, contract being one, and the project concept being one, and I can't remember what the third one was, but so that's kind of the short term.
One thing Dwayne and I were talking about at Ops too was, let's just say, kind of for sake of argument, we're going with the 5 right now, right? But into the future, I tend to think there will be opportunities for expansion in solar. I think that how we deal with solar utilities companies is going to change in the future as well. And so kind of what we're talking about is like, with the sewer lines, that really the expense is doing the dirt work, right? Not laying the line. So when we're thinking about, like, again, with that 5 megawatt system, maybe we kind of do the dirt work for 15 if it's, it's not astronomically more expensive, and kind of plan to where we might be at the very end if it's, if it doesn't really add that much cost. You know what I'm saying? Like, opposed to going for the smallest and then, decide in a few years we want to go upgrade. Kind of that level of thinking.
Yeah, plan for the future.
Well, I mean, just in general construction contracts or projects I've worked on, that's where I always see, especially as they go longer, that's where I always see things stay, and the real expensive changes take place, is when they didn't plan for stuff that's going to be underground that they might want in the future.
Right.
Yeah, I think this is expandability is a concept that we want to make sure that we're building into the project concept, whether there's anything like physically installed now, or if it's just
Do we have to do any archaeological work
No, I wouldn't anticipate it for a site like this. I mean, no, you're not going to have like, it's not EIS or EIR scale. It's going to be really minor. Again, I don't even think you're going to be charged coverage. I think it's going to be a really simple permitting process with TRPA.
And just to remind the board, because this is their project, right? And we're the customer here. We're not taking the lead on the permitting or any of that. That's part of their scope of work. We do have some expertise and relationships and things like that I think will help. But they'll be taking the lead on that piece and figuring all that out.
I'm kind of leaning towards going big.
Well, maybe, yeah, I'll jump in now.
You always do that. Well, actually, you guys, we talked about this a lot in our agenda review, and Gary had some pretty good points, and he also has had experience with other clients doing this kind of stuff. And they haven't always been some outways.
Well, I mean, I think, as was mentioned, the project, from what was in the proposal and some of the spreadsheets that came out afterwards, the project was evolving, and so the financial analysis that's been presented so far really isn't for what we were thinking about for the project here, even at 1 megawatt. If it's going to change, then those numbers, everything analysis needs to be redone again. And so I think the first thing that needs to happen is what Julie mentioned earlier, is we need to get a definitive project description so that they can run their financials on what this is going to look like for operation of the facility going forward. And we will probably provide them, I might say, I think we're going to have a conversation after this meeting, talk a little bit about what we need, and my recommendation in discussions with staff is to bring on HDR to help with those analysis of the system to make sure it's going to do what it's supposed to do. And we work with HDR on other projects and helping evaluate solar systems. Given that there may be a fairly big commitment to pay X rate for 20-some years, in my opinion, it's a very good investment to make sure you have that checked on the performance of the system and the financial benefits that you're seeking to receive. But again, the first thing, I heard now, different thoughts on what the size of the system should be. I don't know where you want to leave that. I think staff needs some direction on, is that going to be a 4 or 5 megawatt system, or is it going to be 1 megawatt?
So my question is I heard it right, we have to get special PUC permission to go above 1 megawatt?
So yes, sir. So
shouldn't we find that out first? If we have that allowed?
I think
We already if that's allowable or not, right, Gary? Because we need to know what size system we're going to have.
Let's run 2 tracks. Let's run this proposal for the smaller one and the bigger one at the same time. So what happens?
Yeah, maybe like a 1 and 5 and the
Well,
14.
what's your drop dead date for getting your?
we need to feel, our firm needs to feel confident enough in the transaction moving forward by the end of November to be able to deploy 5% of total project costs in order to safe harbor the ITC according to our estimates.
So the scramble is we've got to really hurry up, take a look at what it's going to look like both ways. Get somebody, a consultant, to look at it right away, and you get back to us by the end of November.
Correct. Well, I mean, I think from our side, I think that that's something that we can turn around very quickly. My only question today was, with the 14.6 represented, in the letter that was sent out in the debrief for the meeting, I just didn't understand if that's where we were, jumping to, or kind of what the direction that you would like us to go in order to provide, those analysis of those tracks to be able to finalize and have everybody confident.
Yeah, so, my agenda was really geared towards that 1 megawatt facility, obviously, because that's the only pricing that I presented you with. And I think that's because I think we can feel confident that we can build that facility. I don't yet feel confident that we can build the other facilities. And so, you know, I would think an appropriate approach would be let's move forward with talking about the 1 megawatt facility, and then you know, looking at maybe some phasing. You know, because if we can build that 1 megawatt facility in 2022, then maybe the next 4 megawatts comes in like 2024 or 25, and then, you know,
Right. Well, what's the
well, the price, that will affect the pricing, right? I mean,
Right, it'll affect whether we make money or not.
well,
So, but
how
I'm not saying not
much
to
is
do
that 26 versus 20? How does that?
So we lose 4% of the tax equity value.
Okay, so the price goes down, but
price goes
do
down.
you expect
that's
it's going to
up.
have that much of a negative impact in the price per kilowatt?
I don't feel like it would have a negative impact in the price per kilowatt, but it might introduce the idea of either extending to a 25-year term, which is kind of acceptable across the board in the industry, or instituting some type of small escalator of 1 or 1.5%.
Okay.
That's more than likely what I feel like our investment firm would move towards.
Okay.
I see.
So what's the CPUC timeline for looking at something like this? 5 megawatts.
So we're looking at 6 months as far as full interconnection studies.
No, I'm saying for them to get us the approval.
Oh, as far as approval, we have to submit single one-line drawings, and then there's normally a 30 to 45-day approval period.
So that might not happen by the end of the year.
But the date is about their level of security that we,
Right.
as an organization.
So in other words,
release the process.
if you're confident you could get this higher, I think approved, you would go ahead and put the capital in and then get the tax credit. So
And you've already got these other agencies on board, right?
We have been awarded as the vendor. We are starting the negotiations as far as the same thing that would take
you're
place.
doing this with the city right now.
Yes, sir.
Actually, they pay a lot more for energy than we do.
What's that?
The city pays a lot more for energy than we do.
The bundle of projects was broken into 2 pieces, and this one was awarded both bundles.
So it seems to me-
And so, yeah, they were selected as a preferred vendor for both bundles, and so are moving forward with basically all the participants in the negotiations.
So it seems to me that the CPUC agreement, the liability to some degree exists on you.
Correct.
So if at the end of November, we think, 5 megawatts is looking good, Gary's team checks it out, the numbers, and then the CPUC says no, then that's on you. Okay. So we don't have any liability.
Correct. Actually, throughout the complete development, engineering, construction, commissioning, ongoing maintenance and operation of the system, you have no liability. It actually all falls on us for the ownership and operation.
Is he under oath?
Raise your right hand. Raise the Bible.
But that is also the way the document is written as well. That was,
No, I think, and I agree with Shannon and Gary's point. I think, high confidence for all involved is paramount. You know what I mean? I think no second guessing that whatsoever. But I would be in favor of moving forward with the 5. If we're getting guarantees, and in the deal set, the table's set right now, we have no liability, and the money and their paybacks faster. Kind of.
Well, yeah, let's have them presented. Let's see what it looks like.
See what it looks like.
So you get the direction.
You want to run?
Well, we need a motion.
You want to run 2 parallel tracks?
I think so. I think the one which we know is a done deal.
Yeah, each side.
The 1, the 5, the 15.
You guys have to work weekends and get a track in there.
we'll need to do some further engineering on our side. There will be another on-site visit.
So what are the three ones? We know.
So the 1 is basically the 25 to 30% offset, the 5 would be 100% offset, and then the 15 is the one that basically feeds to the grid, and we, are then benefiting from that, but it's basically feeding.
I believe if we do this, we should go as big as we possibly can.
Great too.
I mean, honestly, why would you put that kind of work in just to make it into phases and then have to go back and do that again? I mean, it makes no sense to me. I've been sufficiently convinced that this has some financial upside and it's also environmentally.
Unless you think 10 years from now there's going to be a big technological leap that'll have can get twice the output with half the area.
That's possible.
But I think our question is whether we can permit of the large system, right? Whether that can all get done. We think that can get done. but
that's
we
why
don't,
you all agree.
we're not
Right,
sure.
so you always have a
on that. And I would say 15, I would defer to you guys in saying, look at our property, if we can go bigger than 15, you tell us what that looks like, let's work that out, leaving us space to increase the size of the plant in the future if we have to do that. But you tell me how big a facility you can build here, and how big a facility you think you can permit, and let's go there.
Right.
I mean,
Because
we don't, as SDPUD, we don't want to be, we're not telling you that there's a cap for SDPUD.
Right.
It's between you, the PUC, and the other regulators as far as how big of a system you can put in.
How many plants do 100% recycled water and 100% renewable energy in the United States?
It's a very good
world.
Right. So Dwayne and I were talking at Ops meeting, they're gonna have to start naming the awards after us, I think.
I can't even spell it.
Love it.
You need to either take the letter out or put one in.
Okay, I think we've hammered this very well. It's been very informative. Thank you for
Yeah, thank you.
all your
It's good at the
information.
time to explain it to me.
Yes, sir, no issues. That's what we're here for.
I'm going to just say that I make a motion to direct staff to enter into negotiations with a shortlisted vendor for solar projects at the wastewater treatment plant.
I'll second that. Okay. Coming at you.
Okay, you got a unanimous vote, so
Thank
that's
you very much.
something right.
We'll be back soon.
All right, long action item agenda, payment claims.
I move approval of payment of claims in the amount of $1,539,844.63.
Second.
Okay, once again, 5-0. Thank you. At this time, do we have anybody that has anything standing in the ad-hoc committee to report on?
We had the finance committee meeting.
Okay. Chief's little report.
So what we talked about was giving John more authority in spending in order to streamline his operations so that under certain circumstances, we don't have to wait an extended period of time for certain expenditures under, say, repairs or, anyway, his original was 25. We agreed to up it to 75, Kelly and I thought that was sufficient. And it would still be under the purview of all the people that still review that, especially Paul. And it would also be something that John would probably most likely report to us if he had to make that executive decision.
Yeah, it's just a streamline, kind of repair and replacement of pumps. We're seeing those kind of creep up in cost, 30, 35, 45, 47,000.
25, how old's that 25 grand limit?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so.
I think we said 2006.
So 2006, and it
It's been a long
went from
time.
15
Or
to
14.
25,
Yeah, okay.
6 years.
What one of the city managers did is they thought it was just per issue, and they did 5 issues a month, and it got kind of crazy. So I think maybe just a phone call to finance committee would be good. Say, hey, we got this.
So is this gonna be on the next agenda?
Next board meeting.
Okay, so we can talk about it a little more on the next agenda, but I think in concept that makes a lot of sense.
Sounds good. Things are so much more expensive.
Yep.
When you got a pump out, you gotta go.
Yeah, I'll streamline getting those things done.
Okay, I think that's it on the standing ad hoc committee reports. So is there any individual board member reports?
Happy to be back. Good to see everybody in person. Happy I got
Yeah.
the best.
Just like Thanksgiving.
Exactly.
Well, maybe after I'm gone, Nick, you could reshuffle the chairs and put the new guy in the little seat.
That's it, whoever it is.
Whoever it is. All right, which brings us to the DORADO Water Agency Purveyor report.
I'm going to defer to John on that because there was a meeting yesterday. I did not attend remotely.
Yeah, we had a kind of standard meeting yesterday. Still quite a bit of work on the new development of the strategic plan. So a lot of discussion on that. We're looking to finalize that in November and December, and really appreciate the level of outreach they've allowed us to participate in that process. I think working out really well. And actually, the next board meeting is on December 9th, so we're skipping a month. So I'll proceed with GM report. Okay, got a number of items today, starting with a staffing update. And as I've talked about in the past, most of the year, we're currently short 3 full-time crew level, these are field level positions, and also a human resources assistant. The HR assistant recruitment will be coming up, I think, later this year. I'm working with Liz. We're taking a look at the job description, and we're really looking for the best window to recruit and then bring someone on board to onboard as a new employee. So looking at that later this year. So today I wanted to talk quite a bit more and focus on those 3 current openings for the field crews. So there's one each underground repair water, there's one underground repair sewer, and then one recycled water worker at DVR. And that DVR absence came when we had a retirement in pumps, and so one of the DVR workers transferred to pumps after an interview process. So we've got those 3 openings, and at DVR, Jim's been making do with the short crew, all I think for the last 8 months, and even with that, our expanded operations at DVR with the hay operations. And our water and sewer crews I think we've mentioned this, especially in ops, but they've been struggling to keep up with the daily demands. And as a result, that's really left our asset management programs falling behind, such as valve and hydrant maintenance, our water quality flushing, video inspection of sewer lines, and ditch maintenance activities. So, these have seen delays, and just that's getting more and more problematic. So now and moving forward, we really need to, I think, significantly accelerate this frontline work on our asset management programs. This is work directly on our system to identify problems, make repairs before they become those expensive emergencies.
When will those be posted, and can a person, I've had people ask me about whether we had anything open, and I told them that if we hire in-house, then that person's job, is open, the person that got the job, so I thought there would be some. Can someone apply for all 3, or how does
Yeah, we're still, Liz and Chris and Shannon, we're still talking about how best to do each of these 3 positions. It's looking like that undercover, the sewer position, we'll probably do in-house because we have a lot of in-house interest and a person that we're really looking at in-house very strongly. But the rest of those positions will absolutely be advertised for an extended period of time and open to everyone.
Okay.
So we kind of look at each one on a case-by-case basis, but we don't want to, do this big recruitment effort when we really have someone in-house that, 99% they're going to get the job. We don't want to waste people's time in those types of effort, but we also want to have, we don't want this to be continually in-house recruitments. We want to get, open it up to the community, be transparent, and get a lot of opportunity out there, and continue to be kind of the employer of choice in town. It's really our goal moving forward.
Sorry to ask so many questions. Isn't sewer usually the place where people enter our system?
That's one of, well,
Isn't that
that's a way to get it,
Isn't that one of our entry-level places? Because most people would rather put water than sewer.
We've really made the sewer positions more attractive over time.
That's good.
We have all this new equipment and new TV equipment. No, actually more technology, and that's sort of a joke, but actually in reality, I think there's a lot more resources for our sewer workers to work with. And they're enjoying that new technology and being more effective.
Yeah, I've run into people fairly often who ask about the jobs. So I just told them to keep an eye on this, check it out.
Yeah, really, a very strong pipeline, especially for locals that are trying to get on with the district, is to, if they can, start with those seasonal positions. And they're working with our crews, and they can see what we do, and we can see how they work, and then when that full-time position comes open, they really have a leg up. So those seasonal positions are important. I think the underground repair, either on water or sewer, those are key entry-level positions for the field workers.
Okay.
So yeah, looking to fill these 3 positions. Really, working on the exact schedule, but with board approval, I'd like to go ahead and start, recruiting for those positions right away and get these existing crews back up to full strength. It's really an important step to help us protect, repair, maintain our system, and really build that more reliable, more robust, a more cost-effective future.
Yeah, I know that we were discouraging filling positions during the COVID thing because we were really nervous about what was going to happen with the economy and everything else. But we've gone so far into this now, I think we need to get those going so we don't neglect our system.
It's kind of what we said too.
Yeah. We addressed it briefly at the finance.
Does anyone have a good sense of kind of the economic realities? And the reason I ask is kind of, what I'm encountering kind of in my professional life. And then just for my house, I call the gutter guy. They're like, man, we'll get to you kind of maybe summer next year.
Oh yeah,
I call the fence guy, and they're like, maybe August next year. I was like, God, so, I mean, that's not indicative of the whole community I know, but it just, is there any analysis? Because it just, it seems like we're...
That's exactly the truth. I can tell you that the town was as busy as ever. But I was looking at sales tax and thinking, yes, there were some months where we were way down, 25% of what should be collected. And then July, I think, was a record sales tax. And the reason why was so many other counties were closed. So our pizza parlors, some of those had some record days.
2 times normal.
But there's some businesses that just didn't fit the mold, and they're going to go out of business. And that was kind of why I was pushing that assistance. There's people, for instance, myself. I substitute teach since I'm retired, but I can't do it because my son can't go to school, so I have to stay with him. And single moms out there that got 2 or 3 kids cannot afford child care. They can't. There's nowhere to go. So there are pockets of people who are desperate. For instance, in the United States, I think almost 900,000 people applied for unemployment. So it's not good completely, but there's pockets of great energy, and I think it came from the people from San Francisco moving up here. We got some great people moving up. Computer commuters. The housing prices jumped because they wanted to get out of the Bay Area for a variety of reasons. So we had a pocket of activity that really helped overall. But there's some that are just, they couldn't get open. For instance, little Escobar's gym just didn't fit all the pockets. Couldn't find anywhere to do it outside. His bills were mounting, and he was just inches from going under. So those are the calls I get from the chamber. Can you help me? And try to put them in touch with somebody who can help them. So it's way up and way down. But I don't know if that helps.
Bill, maybe I'll pass this on to the board. Paul gave me this a few days ago. It's the sales tax revenues for the city for the past 8 years. So I'll forward those on, but just looking at July that Dwayne brought up, our sales tax revenues for this July were almost twice what the average has been. And it's been, August was higher than normal, and September is much higher than normal, based on the previous 7 years.
If you look back at March and April,
not so much.
even June.
April was a little rough. Sales tax revenue is about 100,000. I'd say the average was should be around just 280, 300,000. So, yeah, that's overall, and depending
And
on what
the stimulus
sector.
got people buying TVs, fixing things.
And also, I guess along those same lines, if you look at our water and sewer flows, and this is for September. I'm looking at these every month, but looking at September this year was higher than the trend, about 7 million gallons per day on average, and the trend would expect about 6.5. And on the sewer flows, also just slightly higher than average, than normal. So, okay, thanks for that. Those your comments on the staffing. We'll get going on those for sure. So next, I want to talk about COVID-19 at the district a little bit. There's still no sickness within the district. We have had one employee that reported a positive result after returning from an out-of-town gathering. So although asymptomatic, he was actually out of the country. He came back. We asked him to get clearance first before he returned to work. So he got tested at the Lake Tahoe Community College facility. It came back positive. We had him remain out of work until we got the test results. So he then remained out for about 10 days. He received a doctor's clearance and really had almost no symptoms. He had just a slight cough, fortunately, and he is now back to work. So in this case, he was kept out as a precaution upon his return. And so there's no contact or potential contact with other district employees. So our protocols really worked in that situation. So no employees are now out due to COVID precautions. We have had some other employees with children back home that were sick, apparently seasonal flu because they're all tested. Those all came back negative. And so all of those employees that were home as a precaution are now back to work. And, you know, we got the cold and flu season coming up. I expect we're going to see a lot more of these types of things. And we'll, as much as possible, try to keep folks out of the office and away from the crews when they have these concerns. So what else? Our front office is open to the public and all is well up there. And more of our office staff are returning to the office, although many continue to work remotely to some degree, at least, due to health risks at school, or due to their own health risks, or due to school and childcare issues. So we do have the grade schools going back to the hybrid schedule at the end of the month, or Shelley, do you have the schedules?
This week.
This week is the middle school.
They started hybrid for the elementary schools this week.
Elementary schools were this week. The middle schools begin that, I think, in 2 weeks. And then the high school.
First part of November.
Okay. Yeah, they're kind of staggering.
There'll be like a couple of days a week, just till noon, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so of course, a lot of our employees have kids in school, so as long as they can work at home, we're encouraging that, we're supporting that, and also because it's working from a productivity standpoint. For on the customer assistance program, we talked a little bit about this at Finance Committee as well. We'll bring a summary to you at the next board meeting, and the board can then discuss the continuation of that program or a change to that program with kind of a planned rollout in December. So does that type of schedule work for the board? Okay, we'll bring that to you on November 5th. County paving. If you recall, and this would have been about a year ago, beginning about a year ago, I brought some issues forward regarding the amount of paving that the county was requiring for our patch paving due to new water service connections or due to water line repairs. And I do have a positive update for you on this. We've been able to work with the county effectively, both locally, I would say especially at the local level, but also with them in Placerville to achieve a solution which has reduced this level of paving, patch paving, by about 50%. And as I understand, the county has further agreed to work with us to reduce this even more. So obviously on a case-by-case basis, but especially those areas with poor existing pavement. So by we, I really mean Shannon, Chris and Tony especially, for bringing this forward initially and then achieving this effective solution with the county. So thank you, and please pass my thanks on. PCE, a little update on PCE. Haven't talked about that in a while. At Lukens, they are nearing completion of a 650 gallon per minute carbon treatment system that removes PCE at well number 5. This is began construction in May, and they're nearing completion. This should be online in February. And
Will we be able to close the airtight at that point?
I
Or is
would,
that not enough capacity?
I believe so. I mean, I think we can.
And how much is going through? Is it?
I think on average 60 gallons per minute, but again, that's on average. So they may still need us on a peaking basis.
Okay.
And then part of our preferred strategy moving forward to clean up PCE at the Y is to, once this new treatment system is installed at well number 5, that'll be the main source of water for Lukens. And then they're looking to redrill a new well on Helen and on Hazel rather, and install a treatment system there. And then we'll have 2 wells in the Lukens area that will be pumping and treating groundwater. But for that, to build this new well and this new treatment system, we'll be working with Lahontan, the state, trying to get that implementation funding, working with Lukens and Tahoe Keys. Very expensive operation, but we're looking for the state to really kick in implementation funds to both build that and operate that for 20, 30, 40 years. Last item I have is affordable housing. I think good news on this front, more workforce housing projects are emerging. I mentioned the project at the corner of Pioneer Trail and Ski Run. This is about 80 units that are planned. It's the old Zarin's nursery site, if you remember that. The property and the adjacent property has already been purchased by Pacific Development, the developer, and they're in a conceptual design stage. And this housing project has ties with the Loop Road project, so we'll see where that goes. But secondly, Paul and I met with the city and another developer last week regarding a 240-unit affordable housing development, mostly on Tata, mostly across from the Tahoe Verde mobile home park, and it's on CTC land. There's also another smaller CTC parcel that's behind the South Lake Brewery in that same vicinity. But together, looking at about 240 affordable housing units. This project, and Dwayne, I think you have more information on this than I do. This project looks highly probable due to highly certain state funding for this specific project. And so 240 units, this would require over 600 sewer units, and which would cost about $1.7 million normally. So they are looking for help on this. And we can help by facilitating transfers of unused sewer units into the project. There's both publicly held and privately held sewer units. So we'll help kind of bring those together for this project. We can help facilitate that. Perhaps the district can also finance some of those remaining connection fees, water or sewer, similar to the Aspens project, where we spread the water connection fees out over, I think it was 20 years? 50 years, okay. And there are some, wrinkles with the way that was put together, and we'll want to talk about that in more detail. And we have engaged Gary on this as well to see what the district can do and bring that all to the board. But first, we're looking to meet with our workforce housing ad hoc committee, Dwayne and Nick. I would say if you're available the week after next, and we can go through these details, maybe put together some recommendations for the full board. I just wanted to let you all know what's been cooking out there.
Right now, I think the city has 100 sewer units. I'm not sure. And then Whole Foods is supposed to give back some sewer units once they find out what their needs are. And it seemed like there was a lot, and there had to have been a lot on that Super 8 project. Because they had a restaurant in there, they had a swimming pool, they did. And, probably some hot tubs.
I thought the city ended up with the Super 8 units.
They did, they were supposed to, and then we told them to check on it. And now they're going back and say, wait a minute, those were ours. The Whole Foods says, okay, we're gonna take what we need and then we'll give back the rest. So that's what I know about it.
Yeah, taking the Bijou Marketplace out of the numbers, the city has 56 sewer units. The seed, well, this project alone would need like 620. So just looking at the numbers, sewer units out there, CTC is 69, the Forest Service is 82. If you add all those and a couple others, the publicly held excess sewer units are on the order of about 216. But we have 2,350 sewer units out there unused, privately held. So I don't know if I mentioned this before. I think we talked about it in the AD-HOC committee. We're working with the Tahoe Prosperity Center to bring the market together, bring the developers and the city and others, and connect them with the private property owners that are interested in donating or perhaps selling at some point sewer units for these types of projects only, affordable housing projects only.
So do you have a list of who has banked sewer units?
We have name and address of her, yeah.
I mean, so unless they use, and just out of curiosity, so unless they use them on site, there's no intrinsic value to those sewer units.
I don't see one.
So, I mean, looking to how to get people to, play, if you have the dollar value assigned to that, if they donate that, would that be a tax benefit to them or anything we did to sweeten that deal for those folks to kind of, because it has no value now. So if you're a high value property owner, you have a bunch, it's not worth anything to you, but you can write 100 grand on taxes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that would be the driver. Yeah, it seems like that would work. I mean, there's an intrinsic value to a sewer unit.
It's what we charge.
What we charge, that's what's easy to quantify.
So except for we don't let them transfer them, so they have no value.
That's right, so they have no value to them, but they could, so what we look to be doing is something that, like, if you're just sitting at your house and you got 3 banked sewer units, you got no value.
And we allow them to transfer it to a public project.
And then all of a sudden you can write 75 grand on
And
taxes.
the fact that it stays at public project that amount of money, then it has that amount of value.
And on another simpler way, and I'm not sure if the codes would allow it, is to create a category of affordable housing that we just designate that if a local government agency designates something affordable housing, that we sell to them at our affordable housing sewer unit rate.
Yeah, and
Does that make sense?
Put that into the ordinance, is what you're saying.
yeah, so that's one of the things we're working with Gary on to see if that can be done.
Yeah, we're taking a look at, when the Athens project was constructed, we took a look at what options were available back in 09 or so, I think, 08, 09. And we just, anyway, a ways back, a while ago. And we, at that time, we thought, the best that we could do was to allow the financing. And that's what we actually ended up doing on that project, and that worked out. Talking to John, he asked us to take a look to see what things have changed. Is there any that would allow us to be a little bit more creative now as far as allowing district to offer on some basis a reduced connection fee, whether it's on sewer units or on the water side. I don't think it really matters. And which one it is, or both. So anyway, that's what we're looking at right now. We should have that research, I think, should be pretty much buttoned up this week. So I'm talking to staff about where we're at. I'll brainstorm on that before we bring the results up to the board.
Paul, you might want to run an analysis, but it would be, for instance, let's say if we charge half and got the money up front versus loaning money out and having to wait for it for so long, what the value would come back to us as. But our community's just dying for this stuff, so whatever we're a public utility, we have to kind of recognize that, do what we can. And I'm proud that we've done what we've done because it kind of started the ball rolling.
Totally. Yeah.
One of the things you need to watch on the connection fee side and setting what the value is, those are all really done through a similar to a Prop 218, but through Prop 26, setting the value of both the connection fees and the sewer unit prices. So there is a process that we have to go
which we did a number of years ago.
Right.
And the reports basically illustrated what the maximum is that you can charge. You can always charge less than that. But what we don't know for certain is, can you do that for different customers?
Yeah.
The simple answer is probably no.
That's
but-
awesome, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, some more information coming, and we'll set up an ad hoc committee meeting and bring it to the full board in the near future.
Okay, so it looks like we're on to staff reports here, and I guess Shannon, you got a couple of things for us.
Yeah, fairly briefly on water loss regulations. Steve Caswell met with Joaquin Escobar and some other water agencies to talk about our concerns with the water loss regulations, and really conveyed what we've talked about in the past. And what we understand is that they should be coming out with a new model and new proposed regulations at the end of October. So we're waiting to see what the next round of regulations looks like, so that we can get in there, tear it apart, and see what comments we make. So we'll update you when we get that information. The Highway 50 sewer lateral, this is at the Integrity Locksmith. We've brought this to you previously, discussed it with you previously. We did go in, SDPD staff and Thomas Hayne Company went in and uncovered the sewer lateral, excavated, and found that with Caltrans staff on site, that what appears to have been a cap or a plug was got into the line or left in the line and had been pushed all the way across Highway 50 into the sweep going into the sewer main, and that's what was causing the obstruction. Caltrans, particularly Ahmad, Caltrans indicated that he's happy to write a letter in support of us. He doesn't have any money, although he's going to try and see what he can do. We are putting together our costs in association with Integrity Locksmith and the cost that he had seen for his porta potty and other plumbers work on the line that has not been reimbursed by Caltrans. And we'll jointly go ahead and submit a claim to Caltrans and see what comes out of that. And we'll fight that battle as it goes forward.
Shannon, wasn't the line a little bit offset from the main?
It was, there was a separation in the line with the plug being below that separation. So where the sweep comes up off of the sewer main and connects to the lateral, that was disconnected. We don't know if that was something that was pre-existing or if that actually was from the work plumbers had done with hydros and pressure and trying to break the stoppage. They may have caused that to come apart, but we repaired all that and fixed it. So it's not clear if that was a pre-existing condition or not. My opinion is it's probably from the plumbing work, since if that to me would be a place where that cap probably could have been offset and sat in there for 20 years without having any problems, and the sewage getting past it because there was that separation. So in my mind, at least, it's total speculation because we don't know, but that's probably something that occurred after the blockage took place.
And the cap was orange, which is.
Cap was orange, yeah.
Obviously, it's tough.
And my thanks to the field, to Doug Van Gordon and his staff for putting this together and making it happen, and Ivy out there, and also particularly to Trevor Coolidge, who was working coordinating the Caltrans project on Highway 50, because there was speculation about, well, did they ever get into that sewer? We didn't get into that sewer line. Well, I don't see that this is our responsibility. Were some of the claims, not that Ahmad had made, but some of his staff had claimed. And Trevor had the pictures on his camera as we were standing out in the field saying, yeah, this is your truck. That's a piece of the sewer lateral that you just removed and replaced. And this is your guys doing that with your equipment. Or with the contractor doing all of that work on the job site. So that was a huge help in putting us over the hump with this issue.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, well, again, thanks to the staff for getting out there and making it happen. We did have an incident. I don't expect that necessarily we'll see anything from this, but who knows what the future holds. There was a traffic accident in close proximity to our work zone where a motorcycle was cutting across traffic and was hit by another vehicle. And again, that was, I think, just in front of our work zone. So that always kind of breeds insurance companies blaming the people in the work zone. This work zone was set up by Thomas Hayne Company, so it wasn't SCPUD staff who did that. Trevor was on site, took a lot of photographs, went through and re-photographed all of our warning signs leading up, and it appears that we're perfectly in compliance with all of the regulatory requirements for work zones. But that's something that if it does come back up, I don't want it to be a surprise if it does arise. Again, we don't think that we have any liability associated with it, but you never know where these things go. The last thing is not on this list, but we have been having problems with water quality out in the Sierra Tract area, so you may have heard of some of these issues. It turns out we were doing some testing. We were actually testing the Paloma well, and there appeared to have been, we don't know the cause of the failure at the Paloma well, but essentially it's something with the filter system, whether it's the gravel pack or the screen has been damaged in the Paloma well. That is allowing a lot of sand or material to come out and creating a murky water situation, a turbid water situation. We have shut down the Paloma well. We're going to pull that well and go down with a camera and find out what the problem actually is, and then make the appropriate repairs. But when we did that test, we ran it really hard at basically max capacity for about 30 minutes in order to test the quality of that well. In doing that, we created a turbid water situation throughout the zone, or in certain places in the zone. In one particular case, we definitely sanded up a main, and we were able to flush that turbidity and that sand out. We caused some low water pressure issues. Those have all been resolved. The water quality, we've not had any bacterial issues. We had turbidity. We never we maintained a chlorine residual in the system in those areas. We had planned to do testing, and so the lab was out in advance of the well test, and then after the well test, and this turbid situation had occurred. So it's something that we're going to be working on in the future with Paloma well. But in my mind, one of the bigger issues is that the Sierra Tract area has not been flushed in probably 30 years. Chris Stanley tells me it's never been done since he's been here. We've had problems out there in the past, and often we need to flush that zone. When we do that, our intent at this point is to do that flushing, to do it a unidirectional flushing, if you will, which basically brings all of the turbidity and the sand that's in those lines in one direction and ultimately flushes it all out. So you kind of do it in a stepwise fashion to pull it in one direction. My concern, and this has been a concern of mine for a number of years, is that's going to put quite a strain on that system. We expect that there are going to be a number of leaks that occur from that. If you think about a steel pipe and the tubercles that develop inside that steel pipe, kind of blockages that happen to get adhered to the sides of those pipes, oftentimes we think of those things as maybe actually holding that pipe together. And so we're concerned that when we do this, we may be having significant pipe issues in that area. But in my mind, we've got to do this because my concern is if we don't do it for this, then if we have a fire out there and someone opens up a hydrant to put out a house fire or multiple house fires in Sierra Tract, and we suddenly load this system up with a lot of flow coming through, we pull these tubercles off, and we burst these pipes, then you can't put out the fire. I would much rather know well in advance through this flushing program that we have this problem occurring. So what we've been talking about is having, for example, a leak detection company come out in advance and look for leaks in that area with acoustic testing, find out, and then fix all those leaks, and then do our flushing, have some pressure monitors on the zone, see what's happening to the best of our ability, go back in, fix pipes as we need to, document what's going on, and then have that company, the acoustic testing company, come back after the fact, find out what leaks we're not seeing on the surface and fix those things. In my mind, going through that kind of process will give us an opportunity to see what the condition of these assets are. What is the condition? How many leaks do we really have? How much damage do we do to this pipe when we flush or flow during a fire situation. That will, in my mind, will allow us, we can then say, okay, well, this is the condition of these pipes of this age and of this material type, and we can then project that to other pipes in our system and give us a better assessment of what the conditions of those assets are. So
Are you going to reverse the flow?
we won't reverse the flow necessarily. It'll be unidirectional. Again, we're going to flush from one end to the other end so that we're carrying all that material out of those pipes.
That's where we've gotten auditor business.
Absolutely.
When Lucan's opened the intertie, allegedly.
Yeah,
Because
yep,
yeah.
pulls back in a different direction. Yeah, and that's probably that's some of what has happened, I think, in the past in Sierra Track. Again, so in my mind, we've got a potential water quality issue, that we have a disruption out there, and then we have this poor water quality surge to our customers. We've got to address that. In my mind, doing this flushing addresses that, but it's also an opportunity to get a better understanding of the conditions of our assets, since we can't keep even like we do with the sewer lines. It's hard to get a great understanding of what exactly the conditions of those assets are. I don't know how it's going to come out. My fingers are crossed. We're going to do this flushing. We're not going to see a huge increase in leaks, and we're not going to see a lot of deterioration in the pipe out there. I don't know what's going to actually end up happening from it, but I think it's a prudent approach that we do so that we have an understanding of what's happening in our steel pipes within the system.
When's the timeline to do it?
It'll be this fall. We don't have, there's a lot of steps that have to take place. We've got to go out and check all those valves out there and make sure that they operate. And so to do that, we've got to do mock shutdowns where we actually turn off the water to customers in an area and see to verify that valves actually work, so that we can know what direction to flush the system.
You notify the customers?
And we will notify the customers, and we will do a public outreach program. We've talked with Shelley about it. We'll do a public outreach program as we're going through this process with flushing and assessing the conditions.
Door-in nurses, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now I know why you haven't done it in 30 years.
It literally, the avoidance has been, we don't want to create water quality issues, so we're not flushing the system. And we're afraid also that we're going to cause leaks. And so we've been avoiding doing that. I just think we've avoided it as long as we can, and we've got a responsibility now to do something out there, that when we do have disruptions in flow, we end up having these water quality issues occur, and they seem to be happening consistently. So more to come on that, maybe more than we want to hear in the future, but we'll be briefing you as we go towards that process, give you dates so that you're aware if you're getting approached by people in the community about what's happening. You'll know what to talk with them about and say, and then we'll certainly be letting you know what the results are once we figure out what we actually see.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else got anything? Well, you can see the past and future meetings, so we don't have a closed session, so meeting adjourned.